Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the event on G20 University Connect Engaging Young Minds. As the great Vedas say, Ano Bhadraha Kratavo Entu Vishwataha. Let the noble thoughts come from everywhere. This event personifies that symbol and the theme. Now I would request the dignitaries on the dais to light the lamp. Indian Presidency 2023 official video.
India, home to 1.3 billion people, is a confluence of religions, traditions, and customs. A thriving global center of technology and the world's largest democracy. As one of the oldest civilizations in the world with a rich cultural heritage and diversity, and as the fifth largest economy in the world, India is proud to assume the presidency of G20. As the country blooms into a new era, we look to another poignant symbol for humanity to emerge victorious from challenges. The lotus, the national flower of India, represents our history and culture and symbolizes spirituality, fruitfulness, wealth, and knowledge. And that's the inspiration for India's G20 logo design. The design, rendered in saffron, white, green, and blue, is drawn from the national flag of India. The 7 petals in the logo signify the 7 seas and the coming together of 7 continents at G20 India 2023. Sitting above the lotus is a representation of the earth, reflecting India's pro-planet approach to life and seeing the world as one family. From this, we derive the theme for G20 India 2023. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future. A theme that brings the G20's focus on shared global growth, while being in harmony with nature. G20 India 2023. One earth, one family, one future. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
Good morning to you all. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh, respected Dr. Sheshadri Chari, Member, Governing Council of RIS, New Delhi, respected Air Marshal Dr. M. Matheswaran, AVSM, VM, and Chairman and President of the Peninsula Foundation, statutory officers, deans, head of the departments, faculty members, research scholars, students, non-teaching staff, and friends. On behalf of the Pondicherry University, Minister of External Affairs, Government of India, and RIS, I cordially invite you all to the event on G20 University Connect. G20 was established in September 1999, and it was very active only in 2008. And G20 represents 80% of GDP and 70% of world trade and 60% of world population. G20 is an influential forum for global economic cooperation, and it consists of developed countries and emerging economies. Presidency has come to us in 2023. And Presidency has created option for India to be at the center stage of G20 forum. Our role is not only to confine to G20, but also we need to look at how we can play a significant role beyond G20. We have taken presidency at the time when the world is witnessing many challenges, including global supply chain crisis, geopolitical crisis, debt crisis, COVID, international disaster, and other challenges which we have come across in the recent times. And there are so many contradictions, divergence of interest between the countries who are member of G20. And decision making cannot be taken if anyone is opposing. There is a veto provision. If that is the case, then how India, which is not a developed country, how it is going to play a very significant role in the year 2023. And this is the time for us to showcase our strengths: digitalization of transactions, inclusive growth, health care, new education policy, unity in diversity, traditional and historical experiences, and our rich culture. India represents a multilateral and multi-religious quasi-federal structure. It has a credibility in the world. It is seen as a reliable partner and not a dominant power in the world. And also, India is a champion of navigating trust between the countries, because this is something which is very important. In the recent times when we have witnessed the war between Ukraine and Russia, I think there is a trust deficiency between the countries in the world, and there seems to be, which may not be proper to say here, there may be indication for a crisis in the world in the near future. And also India is, fastest growing economy, and also it is rising peacefully. And we have these traditional values. It is the time for us to articulate, to navigate, to explain to the rest of the world about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, how one family is important for us. And 5,000 years ago, the civilization which we have now taken, and our Prime Minister is now talking about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and how it is relevant to us. That is something very important for us. And we have to relocate our traditional values, ethics, and how our foreign policy really determined or influenced with the historical legacy. And our Prime Minister is also advocating Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, is also talking about security and growth for all in the region, and also talking about one world, one sun, one grid, or one earth, one family, one future. The development and the roll out of COVID-19 vaccine in India was remarkable. It was witnessed in the rest of the world, how we managed during COVID. Some of its principles, like how India was able to look at implementing either Aadhaar or UPI or DigiLocker, and also many families or many members also successfully open their bank account. That is also remarkable. And India can play a role in stabilizing and bridging at a time when the world is no longer offers an optimistic picture. Other countries are looking at us. It is not only developing countries, it is also, when you're talking about major countries, also looking at India, its significant role in the global affairs. India is in touch with the key players. India is also in touch with the developing and underdeveloping countries. It has access to the most of the countries in the world, unlike the rest of them. We reach countries and leaders in a way which may not be possible for everyone to do so. And also when you look at, we are in a coastal state or coastal state where we are talking about how to navigate the importance of maritimization of the world, because the globalization, it seems to be a kind of a problem, and we are looking at the different countries are looking at the deglobalization process has taken place in the world. And now I think this is the time for us to articulate this maritimization instead of globalization. Even globalization stems from water, and the trade, 95% of trade is conducted through waters, and we know very well whether it is a landlocked country or hinterland country or coastal state, they are largely depending on waters. Thereby, I think it is the time for us to articulate this maritimization, which no country will be in a position to say no. And that is something where we need to look at how that could be possible for us, because Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, how we can relate to the maritimization. I think that is something very important for us, because 21st century has been called as the century of the seas, and that is something where we look at. And also when you look at, unlike on continental front, India was not seen as a dominant or hegemonic on maritime front. India respects law of sea, and when you look at UNCLOS 3 and recent in 2014 ITLAS verdict, where most of the water was given to Bangladesh, where India has agreed, and that is how we have respected the international law, which otherwise no obligation on Indian part. So this is some of the, and also whenever there is a crisis, India was able to help the countries on maritime domain. And India's profile in the world enhanced through maritime domain. I think this is something where we need to look at how we could, translate these the experiences which we have on maritime domain to the rest of the world. And that is something where we look at. And also, as a student of maritime studies, I think we need to look at. We cannot understand Indian history or New India unless we reverse the map and understand how vast area we have on maritime domain, which is very, very important for the future of India. And also we have to navigate this idea which we have derived from the Indian mythology about Samudra Manthan, or churning of the ocean or sea, where there is a war between angels and demons. I think we need to, this is the time for us when there is a crisis in the world, we need to look at how to navigate this idea about there should not be a fight between the states, it should be a fight between the state and maritime, or any threats which are coming from different parts of the world. I think that is something where we need to look at how this could be possible for us having experience as a maritime state. And India's position, which is very important now in the changing global order after Ukraine war, I think there is a trust deficiency, or there is no trust of globalization. I think we need to look at, we have to find a new approach, as a functional approach which needs to be articulated with the rest of the world. New way of approach, which is very, very important, because during Cold War there was at least two hegemonic powers which are able to control the world, but now if you look at in the name of multilateral, we are nowhere in the picture, and how that is going to be, whether we are going to witness anarchy in the world, because that is, it seems to be. So now we need to look at how a new approach can be adopted, how new approach can be articulated to the rest of the world. And Prime Minister does not want to see the G20 presidency as a debating club or talking shop, but this is the time for us, and this is the time for the academic community to articulate, to look at the new approach, to bring our experience to the rest of the world. India has a legitimate power, legitimate role in articulating our experience to the rest of the world. And time has come for us to articulate our strengths, navigate trust among the countries, and show the path to work towards stability, security, prosperity, which is very, very important for us. I look at, and also when you look at this environmental protection, we are the one who are always talking about how to protect the nature. When you look at the GHG emissions, and India is contributing only 3%, though we are not able to meet our demands. If you look at the mitigating of GHGs emissions 25 to 30, there is a report which talks about if India is going to commit, then probably 17% of poverty will be increased. But despite that, this government is now looking at how to reduce these emissions of GHGs. And thereby we are talking about, we are legitimate role to propagate Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, because one family where we are, though we are not part of the problem, but we are part of the solution. Thereby we look at, Prime Minister was talking about one sun, one earth, one sun, one grid, and that grid is going to help us to reduce the emissions of GHGs. I think we have this practice and preach. We practice and we preach. Thereby we have this strength. I think that is something very important for us to look at. And finally, I conclude by saying that because our Prime Minister is looking at that 5 trillion economy by 2025 and 10 trillion economy by 2030, and how it is possible, that is something very important, because our hope is youth. Youth is our future, youth is our hope, youth is our strength. I think while the world is aging, India is becoming young, and this era belongs to youth. 50% of our population is less than average age of 29. Thereby we talk about this era belongs to India. I stop here. I once again thank you all for coming over here to grace the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Raju, for the excellent welcome remarks. And indeed, it's true that India is not a narrow power that looks at national interest as such, but it looks at enlightened national interest. Before we move further in the deliberation, I would request, as part of the regular honoring of the guests, so I request the Vice Chancellor to honor the dignitaries on the dais. Now I'd request the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Pondicherry University, who is the force behind this whole program, to give the opening remarks.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Nand Kishore, for a wonderful endeavor. My very old friend and a seasoned person who speaks on such occasions in an excellent manner, Professor Chari, who has visited our university earlier also, and Air Marshal Bhuteshwaran, who has come from Chennai, from the Peninsular Foundation, to address this particular occasion. And of course, the person who has put in all efforts, Professor Subramaniam Raju. You would be wondering that why organize this program? We all know what is G20. We all know what is the aim of this. And whatever I thought I would tell you, Professor Subramaniam Raju has, in a very superb manner, has put it to you, that where is the necessity of all this. Now the question again will be, why organize all this? Don't we read newspapers? Don't we know about what is G20? Don't we know what is the scenario in the international affair? Well, yes, I will say yes, we all know. But let me tell you, where is the need for this? Where is the need to celebrate our Independence Day every year? We all know that. Where is the need to celebrate Republic Day, Diwali, Pongal? We know what is it and why do we celebrate? But we do it year after year, day after day. We remember all this. Now the purpose of this is, I will put few things to you and you will bear with me, whatever I say. I was conducting a lot of interviews recently in many subjects. History, political science, economics. Leave aside science because they are treated as science types, so we don't expect too much from them, excepting in their own domains. And I was asking people, those who are prospective candidates to join Central University in the capacity of assistant professor, associate professor and even professor, what is G20? I'm just telling you some of the questions we had posed. What newspapers do you read? I'm not telling whether they answered or not. There was a silence. Why India is in the news in connection with G20? Many I'm saying didn't answer that we took over the presidency of G20 group of nations. What is the importance of that? What role they can play? Leave aside that. Where is Argentina? Argentina just won the World Football. And they said it is one of the European countries. Where is Euro as the currency? Australia. I am talking about this, it's an actual thing. And some brilliant gold medalists were not able to answer this. That is the reason our Prime Minister rightly said that G20 has to be talked about everywhere. It has to be put in the posters, newspapers, everywhere, so that we become aware of this. One person very rightly answered, one youngster. He says, sir, I did not know. I am so very confident that the country is doing so well. Why should I bother about it? We are doing very well. Well, it was an answer in the kind of overconfidence that yes, we are doing very well. There is no doubt about it. Now coming down to the point, after having heard from Professor Subramaniam Raju in a very capsule-like form that what is the importance of this, I was wondering where will I take my introductory remark to. Now I would put it in a different perspective altogether. You look at what our country was in 47, then 57, try to analyze this. It's not difficult. You can open Google, put all this and you will get the data. 65, 75, 85, 95, 2005, where how well we are progressing. There are 4 areas in a country's assessment of excellence. One is infrastructure, other is health services, education, or standing on external affairs and defense. Now in all these areas we have done so very well that the whole world is appreciative of this. You will question about health services, but then the way we have managed this COVID, it's a lesson for the entire world that even after the COVID is over, many countries are facing the aftermath of this, but ours is the one which has stabilized. No more cases, very few cases, very well handled. Now we are even thinking of nasal vaccine. So these are the signs of our confidence in the areas we are moving into. Having done that, why G20? What is the importance of this? Now, I am not taking you to the details of what I have said. Education you look at, infrastructure you look at, health services I have said, look at defense. How well we have done, it is something to be assessed by all of you. We fought many wars, and every war we have done well, excepting 1962, where we were taken aback. That neighbor started telling us, all the time he was telling, we are your friend, we are your friend. And we said, this friend is never going to cheat us. But ultimately they backstabbed us. Barring that war, India has done so very well in that also, that now people are thinking of, 10 times they are thinking whether to trouble India in this sector or not. One example I will give you. In the state of Arunachal Pradesh, which has so much of hydel capacity to electricity generation, that we were till 2012-13, we were harnessing only 500 megawatts. And the capacity out of that state itself is 60 megawatts. We were not doing it because the moment you start doing it, China will say, no, don't do this. This is our land. We don't want you to do this. And we will stop it and start thinking how to maintain good relations. They were able to do it because they thought that we are not powerful enough, we are not strong enough, we don't carry enough strong opinion in the world circles. Now, if you assess in the last 7-8 years, we have started generating close to 15,000 megawatts, and tendering process for about 20,000 megawatts is already under process. Now nobody says don't do it, because we have come off our age. We are now in a position, we have redefined the world policy, our foreign policy. We have started saying our foreign policy is what is in our interest. We are not going to look at the Eastern Bloc or Western Bloc. We are not going to look at what you think right or not. Whatever we are thinking right is our policy, and that is the strong voice which our External Affairs Minister had put it in all world bodies, that don't teach us, we know what is to be done. And that has gone very well around the world, and they have started, I'm saying around the world, the whole world has started saying that India's opinion is an opinion which relates to one of cooperation, which relates to one of coexistence, which relates to one of absolute peaceful development in the true line of Vasudev Kutumbakam. We don't intend to occupy anybody's land. We don't intend to attack anybody. We believe in absolute sharing of resources, sharing of wealth. Whatever resources we have offered it to others. The example has been when we had this pandemic and we were giving vaccination to our own states. Whenever any other state needed it, we went very openly and we sent these vaccines to many other countries. That speaks of the kind of thinking and the policy India has. This is what everybody appreciated. Now you will all be wondering, when we have done all that, where is the need to make such a noise about G20? Let me tell you, G20 is a group of nations. Professor Raju has already given you the data, what percentage of economy, what percentage of population, what percentage of strength this group of nation has. Now when you have a strong force in the world and you are heading that and you are advising, you are suggesting that we are one. When we say we mean G20 with India at the helm of the affair. When we say we believe in coexistence, we believe in the policy of cooperation, this will be a force to reckon with throughout the world, in all world bodies. People will start respecting what India stands for. And people will start respecting because we'll be heading this powerful group of nations. This that we do would send a message all over, including the most important body that you call UNO, where the word is controlled by Security Council and veto power. On many an occasion earlier, this veto power had scuttled very many peaceful moves that India had initiated. And now it is just a matter of time. The opinion which is growing all over is that India should be a permanent member of Security Council. We were offered earlier, but for some reason, somebody's mistake, we did not accept and we offered it to China. But leave that apart. Now the sea waves, like they are hitting so much on the walls of this world body that India should be a permanent member of United Nations Security Council. Days are not far off when we'll have that, and the charter also would be expanded. And once that is done, then you will find that wherever there are countries who are having expansionist designs, will be thwarted completely. India doesn't have any of these moves. Our motive is absolute, following the policy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, to move towards the direction of absolute peace, cooperation and economic development throughout. And we have been helping very many nations, not only in the area of defense or elsewhere, in all healthcare. You talk about education, you talk about infrastructure development. We are doing this all over. And the presidency of G20, which is, as I said, is going to be a very powerful body. It is, because the data that you have heard will stand and will bear us out on that. You will find that with this presidency under us, with us, and such a powerful body where we will be guiding, if that is taken further, you will find that the world will become a better place to live. The Ukraine and Russia war, which is there, you have seen how carefully and rightfully, properly India has treaded its path in the world order, striking a perfect balance in this. And all our moves, Prime Minister has repeatedly said, the best way to end this war is by negotiation, by talking, by cooperation, by extending sense of coexistence, by giving up this idea of this is my land, and the way Russia has started moving into another country. We have opposed all this. So this particular presidency during this year will send a message throughout the world that if world has to live peacefully, the path taken by India is the one which will really lead to the policy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And I'm sure the whole world, they have already started respecting our viewpoint, and whole world will take up what we are suggesting in all seriousness, and this world will become a better place to live in. If the way we are designing, chalking out our policies, if other countries will also do it, you will find that the kind of cooperation which is needed in all areas, in scientific development, in education, in all areas, you will find the world will become a much better place to live in, and that is what every country looks forward to. If that is followed, there won't be any war and there will be a peaceful existence. I am glad that this program has been organized. This will be in particular for the benefit of our young minds. I pose few questions to start with, that we need to understand all this, and that understanding is most needed in our youngsters who are sitting here and listening to this, attending to this program. I compliment Professor Raju and his team for organizing such a wonderful event. And at the end of this, let me tell you, you will all be enriched in terms of what India stands for and what is our foreign policy, which is very important from the point of view of understanding for all students. And I am grateful to Professor Chari and Air Marshal Mutheshwaran for sparing their time for this. You listen to this, and I can assure you that you will be a much more enriched person than what you were otherwise. So I wish you all the very best, and I wish the whole program a grand success, and give compliments for organizing this. Thank you so very much, and well done.
Thank you, sir, for those inspiring words. Before I invite Dr. Sheshadri Chari, Member Governing Council, RIS New Delhi, to deliver the special lecture, I'll take a few minutes to introduce Shri Sheshadri Chari, though he's very much known to those of you who are into the television network, and also those of them who have been here in this university for a while. But it's my pleasure to introduce Shri Sheshadri Chari, with whom I could spend a few years. I've known him for a while now. Is an expert in the area of geopolitics, international relations, bilateral, multilateral trade, foreign policy, security and strategic studies. He's also equally having expertise in media and mass communication. Shri Chari, as I mentioned before, is a member, RIS Governing Council, Research and Information Systems for Developing Countries, New Delhi. He's also member, Planning and Monitoring Committee, Manipal Academy of Higher Education. He has also been a consultant for the United Nations Development Program in South Sudan. He's been a national convener of the Foreign Policy Cell, Bharatiya Janata Party, member, Foreign Affairs Committee of the BJP, a former editor of the Organizer, that was between 1992 to 2004. He's also been a joint director of International Affairs Institution for National Security Studies, INSS, working for Defense and Foreign Ministry related projects. He's also been a research director of the Chronicle Society of India for Education and Academic Research, a former vice president, Society for Consumers and Investors Protection, director for the Forum for Strategic and Security Studies, FSSS, IDS headquarters. And every other day you will find him in most of the television channels, and also so many columns that he writes on a regular basis. It's indeed a pleasure to have you here, sir, and I would request you to enlighten the audience now.
Respected Professor Gurmeet Singh Ji, Vice Chancellor, Pondicherry Central University, Professor Subramaniam Raju, Air Marshal Matheshwaran Ji, Dr. Richa Tiwari, my colleague from RIS, Mr. Dr. Ali, and my dear friend Dr. Nandakishore, colleagues and friends. Actually, this was a last minute arrangement that was told to me. I was busy traveling in different parts of the country, and suddenly, day before yesterday, I was told that I have to go to Pondicherry University, and tomorrow I have to address a meeting in Chennai IIT. So whatever little that I have heard from Professor Raju and our Vice Chancellor Saab, I am going to just repeat some of those points, because I am not as an expert as these people are as far as these issues of G20 and other issues are concerned. we all are, of course, very happy that India will be the president of G20. He is the president of G20 now. Sometime around September this year, we will be holding the G20 summit. Every year the G20 summit is held and the presidency comes by rotation. And after we hold the G20 summit, the presidency is handed over to the next country. We took the presidency from Indonesia, and we will be handing over the presidency to Brazil. And from Brazil, the presidency will go to South Africa. So South Africa will be the last of the 20 series. So if you notice one thing, the most important thing that has happened now, that G20 will be handled by India and then Brazil and South Africa in that order. So we also know about what we call the IBSA countries. These three countries are called IBSA. IBSA, India, Brazil, South Africa. Now IBSA, like G20, like G7, like SAARC, IBSA is also BRICS for that matter. IBSA also plays an important role as far as global order is concerned. These three countries, India, Brazil, South Africa, represents three continents in a way, and three democracies in three continents. BRICS doesn't have all democracies. BRICS has two more countries. Besides IBSA, BRICS has two more countries, China and Russia, which are not democracies. So in a way, IBSA has a greater role to play in the world order. And among the IBSA countries, India will be the first to hold the presidency of G20 again. But if you take one more country, that is Indonesia, we will realize that these four countries put together, that is Indonesia, Brazil, and if you take other three countries, Argentina, China, India and South Africa. So if you add BRICS and IBSA countries and add one Argentina, Argentina is not part of BRICS, Argentina is not part of IBSA also. So if you add these countries, it comes to something like $1.7 trillion economy. That is 32% of the GDP, the PPP, purchasing power parity calculation, 32% of the GDP of the world belongs to these countries, which is bigger than the G7 countries, which are supposed to be the richest and the most developed countries. So you can imagine the growth potential of the world. I am not talking of these countries only. The growth potential of the world you can imagine if G20 countries and again add BRICS to that, because G20 includes IBSA countries also. So if you add the BRICS countries, look at the amount of potential that this group G20 has as far as leading the world economically is concerned. Actually, India is taking over the presidency at a very difficult time. We have just, I don't know if it is too early to say that we have come out of the pandemic. When we say post-pandemic, are we still post-pandemic or the pandemic is behind us? We don't know. So every day we hear news about some new variety of new, what you call, new virus, and those of you who are in that field would know the truth or false of it. Whether it is a false alarm by pharmaceutical industries, or whether truly we are in a very bad shape. But at least what we have undergone in these last 4-5 years, we can certainly say that the entire world economy came to a halt, stop. And generally people say that it is a war which halts economy. But here nobody fired a bullet against anybody. But still, one small little virus which cannot be even seen by naked eye has stopped the entire world economy. It has ruined the whole economy in a way, if you see. And it has had a very bad effect on individuals. So many people have lost lives, so many families have lost the breadwinners, so many things have happened. It has had a psychological effect on a number of people. Even now there are people who have some side effects, and we still do not know whether the vaccines work properly or not, what are going to be the after effect of the vaccine, so many things. Individual life has been affected, family life has been affected, community life has been affected, national life has been affected, international life has been affected. So this, as far as the health is concerned, both physical health, mental health. As far as economy is concerned, we know how supply chain mechanism and value chain mechanism have both gone for a toss, which we are still suffering. There are so many industries which do not still have raw material. There are so many raw materials which do not have proper industrial growth. So this kind of atmosphere, an economic atmosphere, which can be which can be categorized in two different forms. One is a period of uncertainty. There is a huge uncertainty as to what is going to happen in future. Whether we will be able to achieve the economic level of 2015 or 14, or whether we will be able to achieve much more than what we have done before. We do not know. Nobody knows. Every day we hear International Monetary Fund saying that so and so country is going to grow at 6%. Then suddenly they will say, yesterday we said 6%, today we think it could be 5.8. As if the 5.8 and 6% is going to make huge difference. I don't know how much difference it makes as far as our personal pocket is concerned. Because personally, whatever we do is what we have now in our pockets is what matters the most. I remember I was introduced as a journalist. I am not much of a journalist, of course. I was a journalist by accident, like there is a prime minister by accident. I can say I am a journalist by accident. So, in fact, as far as journalism is concerned, my guru was Mr. Kamath. So, Mr. Kamath was the editor of Illustrated Weekly, and we all know about him. So, Mr. Kamath was actually working, he was a socialist, and he was working for Free Press Journal. And Free Press Journal at that time was edited by Sadanand. Sadanand was one of the finest Marxist socialists in this country, a fine gentleman, a liberal person. So whoever comes to meet him, students who are interested in journalism, he would say, please come join, you write. So one day he told Kamath that Ashok Mehta is going to speak on socialism, so go and attend. So Mr. Kamath went and attended the meeting, and he came back and wrote a long story, 1,000 words. So Sadanand called him. He said, tell me, did you attend the meeting? He said, yes, sir. Did Ashok Mehta say all these things which you have written? He said, no, sir. So do one thing. In journalism, if you want to write what Ashok Mehta said, you have to quote within quotes. I have not told you to write an essay on socialism. So remember one thing, I will give you 5 minutes. Sit outside think whether you want to become a socialist or you want to become a journalist. So Kamath said, I just felt my purse. I had 2 rupees. So I decided to be a journalist. So what we have to do in future, we decide by what we have now. Whether World Bank says you will be a 6% economy, India will be a 3 trillion economy, 5 trillion economy. By 2035, India will become a 7 trillion economy. But whatever we become, that would be the future. But as far as today is concerned, we should know what we have. And we have to work on the basis of what we have. So if you look at it from that point of view, India is taking over G20 presidency at a very crucial time. It's not that only India is passing through this phase. The entire world is passing through this phase. If you see, we always talk about what we call the world order. World has to have an order. Nothing can function without an order. This entire universe functions only because there is some order. We do not know who controls the universe, who controls the movement, who controls the sun, who controls the moon. That is for theological persons to decide about it. Or if we don't want to listen to the theologist, there are people from the physics, there are astrophysics people, astronomers, astrophysics people. They will tell you there are so many things that controls the universe. There are so many things that control the sun and the moon and the movement and all that. So they have been moving around one another for eons as of now. How many millions of years, we don't know. How many such universe are there, even that we don't know. They say, in Bhagavad Gita there is a reference, Shatakoti Surya, Shatakoti Chandra. So we do not know. There are Shatakoti Surya and Shatakoti Chandra. That means there are so many millions of universe. Again, every sun has its own universe, every moon has its own universe. We don't know about all these things. But it's all has been moving around. So there is some order in it. There cannot be, if there is no order, there will be total chaos. So it has to be an order. That is why they say, Nashte dharme manushyanam vyavahara pravartate. In Narada Purana it is said. Dharma means not religion. Dharma means order. A rule of law. There has to be a rule of law. Dharma is rule of law. Nashte dharme. When rule of law ends, vyavahara pravartate. Conflict starts. So when there is no rule of law, there is conflict. So if you want to avoid conflict, you have to have a rule of law. So if you want to avoid conflicts in the world, you have to have a world order. So what is that kind of world order? We know the present world order. There is a world order, of course. World order again is a very notional idea. It is like share market. When you say my worth is 600 rupees, my share is 600 rupees, it is a notional value. It is 600 rupees only when you go to sell. Probably when you go to sell, it may become 400 rupees. So all this share value is also notional. Property value is also notional. Similarly, world order is also a notional order. But still, it has been functioning. We know about League of Nations. League of Nations, after the First World War, it was set up so that war should be avoided. Nothing happened. The First World War, League of Nations failed to prevent the Second World War. So after the Second World War, they said since League of Nations has failed, we should have something else. So United Nations was there. So United Nations was supposed to preside over the rule of law, world order. But has it succeeded? Our Vice Chancellor was just mentioning that India will become a member of the United Nations Security Council. But at what cost? Do we want to become a member of the Security Council without veto power? Should we accept it? Or we should be clubbed with countries like XYZ? We do not know that kind of a situation. So we are not asking for it. It should be given to us. That should be the status. But even then, is the present world order successful? Has the present world order been able to stop conflicts? After the Second World War, has no conflict taken place? We can't say that. Every place there is a conflict. There are so many flashpoints around the world. So India has taken over G20 presidency at a time when we are limping back to normalcy from pandemic, and we are faced with a globe, we are faced with a world which is full of conflicts. The world has also tried so many methodologies. We have seen how in the early stages, 45 to 55, 60, Atlanticism was the flavor. So they said Atlanticism will control the whole world and there will be an order. But as far as economic Atlanticism in the economic format is totally failed, because there are more than 16 economic organizations in the West which was supposed to be the father of Atlanticism, the origin of Atlanticism. And as far as security and strategic movements of Atlanticism is concerned, we know how it has absolutely failed. Today we are talking about ending the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So one of the most important aspects, even if you negotiate, even if Russia and Ukraine negotiate between themselves or somebody becomes an agent of negotiation, they say even if this negotiation happens, there has to be certain conditionalities, and one of the most important conditions would be that Ukraine will not be part of NATO and NATO will not expand eastward. That should be one of the conditions. So if NATO cannot expand eastwards and NATO should withdraw, which means what? NATO is the defense or security arm or security aspect of Atlanticism. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's an Atlantic Treaty Organization. So Atlanticism has failed as far as its economic aspect is concerned. Atlanticism has failed as far as its defense and security aspect is concerned. Then you come to Eurocentrism. Total failure. After the collapse of USSR, the Soviet Union, there is no Eurocentrism also. Of course, Putin may want to create another Eurocentrism, that's a different issue. But that's a failure in itself. And then people spoke about unipolar world. The Western world or the democratic, so-called democratic world, the whole of West is not democracy, but a Western world, a democratic world, represented by the US. And then the Eastern world or the communist world or the socialist world, represented by USSR. So it was a bipolar world. And in that bipolar world, X country is with US, X country is USSR. India even at that time said that we are neither with that power nor with this power, but we are a separate power. We are a separate group. That's why we spoke about non-aligned movement. Whether non-aligned movement by itself was a success or a failure is a different subject. We will not go into that. But India represented a group which said that world cannot be only divided on two sides, the West and the East, the democratic and the non-democratic, US and the USSR. No, we cannot have that kind of things. Because the socialist groups or the Western USSR also tried to divide the world on the same basis. The dogmatic world, dividing the globe on dogmatic basis. Even that was actually a failure between the haves and the have-nots. Those who have means of production and those who do not have means of production. Those who have wealth and those who do not have wealth. And if you come to the religious dogmatism also, those who are sinners and those who are not sinners. Those who believe in me and those who don't believe in me. The you and us feeling. So ultimately what happened was, the entire world was being divided into certain groups. But all the time, while we were dividing the world into different groups, we were saying the same thing, that universe is one. So gradually somewhere, even though USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was Soviet Union, was representing so many X number of countries, the ultimate goal of USSR, the Soviet Union, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, was the progress of one country, Russia. The Western world was not one. So in a bipolar world, the Western world was not thinking in terms of unified development, but it was thinking in the development and progress of one country, America. So what happened actually was a conflict between nationalism and internationalism. So can we have a situation where national interests are taken care of, but national interests are not taken care of at the cost of internationalism? Or internationalism succeeds, but nationalism fails? Can there be a situation where nations don't exist at all? Because that was what Marx said. State will wither away. He said when the whole world gets and organizes itself into a commune, and the commune progresses, the progress of the commune or the world or the universe or the have-nots will be so vast, so encompassing that the whole world will become one. Therefore, there will not be any national states, nation states. When he said states, what he meant was nation. But did it happen? Is it not the failure of Marxism to seize the future? Was he wrong, or his implementation was wrong? Maybe he was not wrong, but the implementation was wrong, or it was a good diagnosis but bad medicine. He knew the problem, but the solution that he gave was not enough to solve that problem. So instead of blaming the doctor, I think we should blame the future generations or those who implemented it. He said a revolution will take place in a highly industrialized society. In all his life, Marx never visited Russia. He never visited China. He had never seen the face of Russia or China. He predicted his theory for England. But the first revolution took place in Russia, which was 99% agriculture-based country, not industrialized country. So your doctor gives prescription for headache and you give it for a cancer patient. The patient will also die and the doctor will fail. Then you blame the doctor. So that is what has happened. Anyway, all these dogmas also prescribed a certain procedure for the universe. But they were all defeated at the hands of nationalism. Today Russia is fighting for Russia, USA is fighting for USA, England is fighting for England. Every country stands for its own interest. Because they think, if we don't fight for my country's interest, I'll be lost in the race. So I don't care what happens for the universe. So we have to have a development model which benefits me the most, where I am able to subjugate some country, use the resources for the sake of my country. So this hegemonism started after 1990, basically after the end of Soviet Union. It became a hegemonism, a race for hegemonism. So we have two kinds of hegemonism today. Even if you see the rise of China as a hegemonic rise, it's an autocratic hegemonism and liberal hegemonism. Forget the adjectives, autocratic and liberal, but both are hegemonic. So do we still want to have a hegemonic control in the place of a world order? Can we replace the world order with a hegemonic order? So this is where a time has come when a unit, an organization, an institution like G20 has to think of what ails us. What are the problems? What are the developmental paradigms that we have to set? Has the present developmental paradigm helped? Can we say, we used to always say America is a aid giving country. They give aid to other countries. Marshall Plan, we know about Marshall Plan. That was the first major aid that was devised by America. And they told Japanese that whatever Marshall Plan we have, we don't have to even repay. So is aid something that a big man gives to the poor man, a rich country gives to a poor country? India said India is not giving aid. We are also supporting a number of countries, but we call it developmental assistance. But now we are slowly from developmental assistance, we are saying developmental partnership. There is no rich and poor. There are only people who have expendable income, out of which we are giving it to somebody so that as partnership, we give something, the other person gives something. One country gives something, the other country gives something, both work together as a partner. There is no giver and taker. There is no rich and poor. There are both partners. Both have certain qualities. So you monetize your qualities, I monetize my qualities into rupees. So this kind of developmental paradigm will have to be thought of. And what kind of developmental paradigm do we have? A. B. What is the purpose of development? We generally use certain words like growth, progress, happiness. Growth and progress are not the same. If somebody has grown, he has not progressed. So if you don't do anything to the body, from 20 kgs you become 120 kgs. So your body size has grown, but have you progressed? So growth itself does not mean progress. So we have to understand the difference. And if you are progressed, are you happy? Is happiness related only to growth and progress? That way, if somebody says that we all know, I used to always, I used to write some family histories. So I was going through the papers of my maternal grandfather. My maternal grandfather shifted to Bombay long back, Mumbai. Now it is Mumbai. When he shifted, it was still Bombay. So he used to still call it Bombay. And being a blue-blooded Tamilian, he used to say Bombay, not even Bombay in fact. So he was the general manager of MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer Theatre. And his salary was 7 rupees. And he used to say in that 7 rupees, he used to save 1 rupee. So then a time comes when my father used to earn 700 rupees per month. But in that he used to save about 100 rupees. But now the present generation earns something like 70,000 rupees. But they are not able to save even 7,000 rupees. So there is progress. But is there happiness? So these are the problems. So what India started thinking was that we will have to have certain parameters for happiness. So what parameter could be there? We all know about Schumacher's book, Small is Beautiful, a very beautiful book. So there he says, what is happiness? He says, growth and production are again linked to production and consumption. You produce more because you want to consume more. Why you want to consume more? Because you want to be happy. So if you calculate the GDP, what is GDP? GDP is purchasing power. Purchasing power parity, PPP. So purchasing power means what you purchase. If you are able to buy more, you are happy. Why do you buy more? Because you want to consume. That means if you consume more, you are happy. Suppose you have got a physical problem, you go to the doctor. What does he say first? The first thing he will say is like they say in Punjabi, langar. Langar means don't eat anything. Stop eating. You got diabetes? Stop sugar. Stop salt. Eat less. In Ayurveda they say pathya. Pathya means eat less. So you cannot be happy, physically well, if you consume more. The lesser you consume, the happier you are. So the lesser you produce, the lesser you consume. So only produce that much which is required for your consumption. So if your consumption is low, produce less. And whatever excess that you have produced, give it to others. Don't keep it. So this was one idea on which we worked. That is why if you see Ishavasya Upanishad, in Ishavasya Upanishad it says, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkinchit jagatyam jagat tena taktena bunjita. Consume only what you require. Don't consume what belongs to others. Literally, ma grita kasyavid dhanam. No aggrandizement, no greed. 10 Commandments also says the same thing. If you go to any religious doctrine, the Holy Quran also says the same thing. The Hindu scriptures also said the same thing. So that is the easiest way to happiness. So that is what India said. As far as G20 is concerned, they said two things we should remember. One is, whatever we have, it is what we call the global commons. The air, water, the oxygen, everything is global commons. It doesn't belong to one particular country. It belongs to the world. And the whole world belongs to us. We are all Mata Bhumihi Putroham Prithivyaha. So we are all part and parcel of this universe. So whatever happens in one part of the universe affects the other part. You cannot have rich Americans and poor America, or poor Americans and rich America. You cannot have poor neighbors, and India cannot expect to be a great country if you have poor neighbors. India cannot be a poor country in a rich neighborhood. So we have to grow together, we have to progress together, our happiness has to be common. So this idea that the entire globe, entire world is one family is the theme of G20. This is the theme of India. This theme is what we are going to give to the world. And that theme we have to live by practice. It has to be, India will have to be the experimental area where we practice this and preach it to the whole world. And we think our lifestyles can match this. No lifestyle can be at the cost of the resources that belongs to everybody else. That is the idea that India is progressing, India is giving. That is why the theme that it is one world, one family, and one future. We all have a common stake as far as the future is concerned. So this I am Nija Paroveti Gananam Lagu Chetasam. Me, myself, is only the calculation of people with small mind. Udara Charitanam tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. For them, the whole world is one family. I think we, pardon my reading out, sir, a small paragraph in Tamil, in Purananuru, in Tamil literature, Purananuru, of course, you must have heard of. In that, Kaniyan Pungutranar was a poet. So he makes a reference. This is 2000 years back, he said, Yadum Ure Yavarum Kedir. 2000 years back. That is what he said. Yadum Ure Yavarim Kelir is nothing but a Tamil translation of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Udara Charita Namtu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And he clearly says, Agalin Machil Periorai Vetalam Ilame Shiriorai Igaltal Adinam Ilame. The last paragraph of Purananuru, this particular poem, it says this, that you don't, only because somebody is rich or powerful or bigger, you don't have to keep him on your head. And only because somebody is poor, downtrodden, not up to your standards, don't trample him. Treat everyone equally. This philosophy of treating everyone equally, the egalitarianism, was preached by Purananuru 2000 years back. This is the theme that India wants to give to the world. This is the theme of G20, and we have a rich past. But we have challenges in the present. But we have dreams about the future. So we have to carry the past, the glory of the past, to the future. And we are the vehicle for carrying that past to the future. And that is the theme that India is giving to G20. And I'm sure you are all aware of all these things. I have not tried to say something new, and this is none of this is my theory. Whatever I heard from my seniors, my professors, and elderly people, knowledgeable people like our Professor Vice Chancellors, I have just tried to convey it to you. So we will all work together for the success of G20. Namaste.
Thank you for that excellent message, sir. The audience might be wondering how Dr. Sheshadri Chari is so fluent in so many languages. He's also an expert in Sanskrit, English, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Punjabi and Nepali. He can speak like a native. That's his capacity. Thank you for that excellent message, sir. I think Tiena Tettena Bunjitaha is a perfect message for one earth, one family and one future. Be it a coincidence or something that has happened deliberately, today is also the Parakram Divas. Amidst us, we have an Air Force veteran. I request all of you to join me in a round of applause and respect towards our war veteran here. I have the privilege, give me a minute, sir. I have an absolute privilege in presenting to you Air Marshal M. Matheshwaran, an Air Force veteran. He is the founder, chairman and president of the Peninsula Foundation. He is the former deputy chief of the Integrated Defense Staff, Policy, Plans and Force Development at the headquarters, IDS, Tri-Services Command, and was a senior Air Force officer and of the Eastern Air Command earlier. The Air Marshal has had an active service of 39 years in the Indian Air Force. Commissioned as a fighter pilot in 1975, he has flown more than 40 types of aircrafts with vast operational and research experience. He is a graduate at the IAF's Elite Fighter Weapons Establishment, the Tactics and Air Combat Development Establishment, and an experimental test pilot from the prestigious Flight Test Establishment, ASTE, Aircraft and Systems Testing Establishment, and later commanded the establishment itself. The Air Marshal has held number of command and staff appointments including Space, EW, that's Electronic Warfare and Information Warfare, Maritime Air Operations, Air Staff Inspection, Air Staff Requirement and Concepts and Doctrines of the Air War Strategy. He is also an alumnus of the Defence Services Staff College, Wellington, Nilgiris and the National Defence College, New Delhi. He has done his Doctor of Philosophy in Defence and Strategic Studies from the University of Madras. He has had a postgraduate diploma in Financial Management from the IGNOU. He is a senior fellow in International and National Security Forums at Harvard Kennedy School of Governance. He writes frequently on aerospace and defense issues, geopolitics and national security. He was intimately involved with many Indian military projects involving the military, DRDO and the industry. He is a founder member of the Nuclear Command, a person with no nonsense. Happened to meet him when he was still in the service in 2013 at a conference, and we continue to engage with him. He is a marvelous human being to listen and a person with a vast experience. I take this as an honor to have you on stage, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kishore, for those kind words. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh, our Chief Guest, Dr. Sheshadri Chari, Professor Raju, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly the young generation, the students as well. Good afternoon to you all. It's a great pleasure to be here. And after having listened to that wonderful exposition by Dr. Chari and of course Vice Chancellor, I will keep mine fairly limited to the areas that I would consider as realistic focused. Well, as the both Vice Chancellor and Dr. Chari pointed out, it's a defining moment for India to be the chair of the G20. You must also recollect that in October last, India has also taken over the chair of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We are a leading member of the BRICS, and IPSA, as was pointed out. All that shows India's importance, particularly, and stature, importance, and the faith that the world has in India in the context of global governance, which is a big question mark today. We've gone through the pandemic, as was pointed out. There is a war going on in Europe, which is the most tedious and the worst conflict Europe has seen after the Second World War. And there are a lot of turbulences that is afflicting the world. And that is why the timing is extremely important, and it's a defining moment. And I would want to explain a little bit more on this. The Ukraine conflict is seen by many analysts as a defining moment, because that's going to initiate a change in the world order, a transformation of the world order. And if you've seen India's position, we've taken a very balanced position, and the 2/3 of the world are with us in the position that we've taken. It's a neutral stand. Certainly we are not condoning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but we also believe Russia has been provoked, and therefore you need to see a lot more than what is actually generally being propagated. And why is that so important? As pointed out by the chief guest, we were a proponent of the non-aligned movement during the peak of the Cold War. And this is now seen as non-alignment 2, which is quite different because our position at that point of time was different, and today we are a significant power in the international system. And while our voice counts, I will give you an example. In 1974, we did our nuclear explosion, and we came under sanctions, and given our conditions and economic situation at that point of time, it took us 24 years more to gather the courage and complete the development and explosions in 1998. We've grown a lot. We are a significant power, as I pointed out. We are a major military power. We have significant capabilities in terms of technology control, and all that matters more, and particularly in the economic clout that India now shows to the world in terms of potential and clout. We are the youngest nation in the world, as was pointed out earlier. We will be the youngest nation for quite some time in this century, well past 2050. And last week, you saw the headlines, China's population is declining. China will also be the nation that gets old the fastest in human history. All that complex issues come together, and that brings India's timing very well. And once again, going back to why is it a change in world order that I mentioned about? There is something called power transition theory that you all would have read, those of you studying international relations and geopolitics. And when you now look at the power transition moment now, you need to go back as to what has the world been for the last 4-5 centuries. Ever since the rise of Europe began with Vasco da Gama and Columbus sailing out to explore other lands, the rise of Europe came up on the foundation of military power. You must remember that. A breakthrough in technologies, the gunpowder revolution, military clout, and discovery of other regions for resources to build their economy, for trade and resources. So over the period of next 4 centuries, many things have happened. But economic factors are extremely important. And that is the Eurocentric system and the Americas subsequently joined together to create a world which the so-called developed states today are the core economies, and rest of the worlds were converted into peripheral economies who were primarily resource providers. India was deindustrialized in the second half of 19th century, and we remained so till we picked up our game after the 47. It was a Herculean task. Today now we are at a different level. So much of the world has been serving the Western domination, and even post-1945 world that's been constructed. And if you look at the 3 pillars, economic, political security pillar, and technological pillar, they've been crafted so carefully that the benefits accrue to the developed world constantly. That is now under threat by various factors. And these pillars, if you look at what's known as the Bretton Woods system, and you've seen, have you ever heard of anybody else other than an European or an American heading the World Bank or the IMF? No. The voting rights are skewed towards their benefits. And today, voices are coming out of Africa, who've been the largest debtors from IMF to the IMF, that IMF has harmed their developments, stunted their developments enormously. And therefore, there is a big silence from Africa in the context of Ukraine. They think that's your war, please deal with it, don't trouble us. Right? Same pattern comes out from Argentina. The countries like Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Iran are now moving to join the BRICS. This is a change that's actually being looked at very seriously by the rest of the world, and they need leadership. International order, defining international order and controlling international order rests on providing leadership. And that leadership comes on the back of economic strength, on the back of military strength, and of course the way you actually create international relations and how you cooperate with the rest of the countries. The Western format has been on the use of force, on use of coercion, and use of creation of an architecture that is controlled by them. The US was smart to create that architecture, rode on that architecture for the next 70 years. In 1973, they delinked the dollar from the gold and created the US dollar as a reserve currency, which benefited them immensely. That's under threat today. The SWIFT system is a Western-dominated system. So you have a world in turmoil because of you've come to a certain plateau of where the West can continue to dominate while seemingly indicating that it's a very fair and universal system. Not so. Second, the most important thing is that the G7s were the financial interlocutors of the global economic system for a long time. In the 1990s, they said G7 will now expand to G8, they will expand to G10, and finally they accepted G20. Why did that happen? Because India, China, and many other emerging economies crossed that critical mass, and you cannot reverse that growth process. Center of gravity which remained in the Asian mainland for, economic center of gravity which remained in the Asian mainland for over 1,500 years is now moving back to the Asian mainland. And how did this recognition come? The Bretton Woods structure was created to retain that dominance, one, Western dominance. the political structure, including the UN Security Council on the back of the nuclear weapon capabilities, was again dominated by a particular group of countries. And more importantly, you started creating various denial regimes, which is called as technology denial regimes. In the name of national security and international security, you prevented flow of technologies into other countries in a calibrated manner. That's what MTCR was, that's what NSG was, that's what many other denial regimes. India has faced the brunt in many of these cases. One example again, in 1993, we had an agreement with Russia, Glavkosmos, for cryogenic engine technology transfer, and that collaboration, it was a signed deal. The US intervened, Russia was under, it was a very weak power after the Soviet meltdown, and therefore MTCR laws were called out. Russia was forced to withdraw. They left a few engines with us for us to work on. It is not that the Americans did not know that India will finally crack the cryogenic engine, but they knew that it will take India 20 years. And that 20 years was what matters, because the rocket launch market is a highly competitive market. Much of the rocket launch market for space and satellite launches are dominated by Russians, European Union, Americans are now coming back into it, and the Chinese, despite having capabilities comparable to the Americans and the Russians, hold still only 3% of the market. And if India enters, you're going to be eating into the pie. That's one. Apart from the economic factors, once you break through a certain capability, it also relates to development of military capabilities, which is what is happening now. So we were pushed from 1993 to 2014 when we first tested out our indigenous cryogenic engine. And now we've probably broken that. So the technology regimes were again controlled in a certain way. The world needs a free flow of technologies for development. There is a UN resolution in the 1954 which actually puts the onus of responsibility on developed nations, that technologies for development and enhancement of quality of living of people in the developing countries and underdeveloped countries is a must to share technologies. That has never been respected. Simply because it's about market, it's about money, and you've seen that in the pandemic. The leading pharmaceutical majors, when Biden called for making the vaccine free, there was no response to it, including from Europe and from the American pharmaceutical majors. And therefore, the world has now been in this format for 500 years or 400 years. This needs to change. And who can change this? It's countries like India. India is a civilizational state and not the Westphalian format of a nation state in that format. And therefore, a greater India that had influence across much of Asia and larger parts of the world through benevolent influence is what needs to come back. China is a civilizational state as well. And if you look at our histories, before the advent of the Europeans, you will have wars. Wars have always happened and will continue to be there. But then each of these regions, the Indian Ocean particularly, were epicenter of global trade, global wealth, and interactions amongst countries and sharing of intellectual, the knowledge and intellectual interactions. And this was the Mediterranean world, the Indian subcontinent, and the Eastern world, the Western Pacific, which is China. Much of all that changed when the Atlantic dominance came in. And that is what is now under challenge. So when you now look at G20, and as I said, in 1990s, the recognition has come to them that you need to include these emerging economies. And that invitation part has gone past that point where now there is a recognition that countries of the BRICS, countries of IPSA, will call the shots if you don't allow them to bring in their ideas and their views in creating what's known as a rule-based order. the international law in the true sense. When US says rule-based order, it is American interpretation of what should be the international law. It is a Western European interpretation of what needs to be the international law and international standards. We need to provide that leadership to bring about a universal, global, and a humanitarian interpretation of what is acceptable as international law. And that's the way I think we need to develop. In all that, I'll come to my part, or the area from which I come from. Where does the military stand? Where does technology stand? You cannot ignore it. Because while the world fought a fierce war in and ended that Second World War in 1945, and decolonization took place, you must remember 2/3 of the world were forced or coerced into adopting the idea that modern nation state is the state defined by the Westphalian nation state concept. Inherent in the Westphalian nation state concept or Westphalian state system is conflict and war. And that's their, model. And we didn't have much of a choice at that point of time. Today that's well established. But there is an incongruence in adopting Westphalian nation-state model in Asian cultural milieu, which is, I find, is the fundamental reason for conflicts, be it in the subcontinent or even in China. The Chinese Communist Party adopted the European model to create the borders. Otherwise, the civilizational model is a frontier buffer state system. You need to actually probably think about international relations and cooperation, bringing in Asian values, Asian civilization values into a global order. And much of the world is looking for that. That's one part. But when you want to bring this in, you have to be strong as well. And therefore, technology leadership is important. Technology sharing is important to get rest of the world on your track and on your support. A strong military to deter war is extremely important. There is a famous saying of Plato who said 2,500 years ago that only the dead have seen the end of war. Remember that. That's an extremely, very, very valuable statement. There's also a Roman general called Vigetius who said, if you want peace, if you desire peace, be prepared for war. So given the kind of problems that we have with China, and we need to work with China in BRICS and other global forums, in G20 particularly, I think we need to have a strong hand on one side, which deters China. On the other hand, we need to give a hand of friendship to convince them that we both are leading civilizational states of human history. And therefore, we need to work together to change the world as a more conducive place. And while the West, or while the US has already highlighted that the Chinese BRI will change the Eurasian economic system into a Sinocentric economic world order, I think our role as a leader of G20 will ensure that we don't move from a Eurocentric economic world order to a Sinocentric economic world order. Rather, we'll have a world order which respects each one, multilateralism prevails, and more importantly, no single country, however small it may be, is held ransom to a particular system which benefits the leading powers. And this is extremely important. This is where culturally, technologically, and internationally, India can play a major role. And the last part is, in the context of technology provisions or technology cooperations, we could actually do extremely well in space. We are as big a leader as the other developed states are in terms of our competence in space, our competence in ability to develop new technologies and innovation in space. And therefore, in terms of providing communication connectivities, in providing surveillance, in providing preventive measures by proactive surveillance mechanisms for maritime domain awareness, for example, collaboration and cooperative attitude with all the countries, particularly the G20 countries, could change the mindset of the old G7 and bring G20 to the fore in global governance. That should be our objective. And that is what we are working, and that's what should result. And you must remember, finally, when I say G20 takes the center stage of global governance, because who is G7? G7 are the erstwhile colonial powers. Please go back into history carefully. You don't want the world to be run by a neo-colonial system that has been in prevalence since 1945. And G20 can change all that. Thank you very much. All the best to you.
Those were the words of wisdom by an Air Force veteran who is an Ati Vishisht Seva Medal awardee and also a Voice Dinner Medal awardee. Their motto itself is that it's called as Navas Parsham Deeptam, touch the sky with glory. That's what you heard from a veteran as of now. We have a few minutes for the question and answer session, that being the very important part of this, but we will not be able to take lot many questions as we planned. We will be able to take 3 or 4 questions and very pointed to whom it is of the 2 speakers here. Very, very specific questions that they will be able to answer.
What do you think that the G20 can bring for South Asia in general? The second question I have is for Air Marshal Dr. M. Madheshwaran, sir. Sir, you talked about IMF reforms and also Bretton Woods reforms. But at the same time, can we see for a G20 reform? Because we see the European countries, they have double membership like Germany and France. And we don't have enough representation from African or Latin American countries. So do you think that is also a need of our? That's it. Thank you so much, sir.
जब हम G20 की बात कर रहे हैं और आपने बोला कि हमारे जो नेबर्स हैं उनको भी स्ट्रॉन्ग होना है, तो हमने देखा है कि जब हमारा एक पड़ोसी पाकिस्तान स्ट्रॉन्ग हुआ है थोड़ा सा भी मॉरली और इकोनॉमिकली, वो डायरेक्ट हिट करता है हमारे ऊपर एज ए वॉर, 3 और 4 टाइम्स हमने देखा है. तो क्या इस कंडीशन में उसको हमें सपोर्ट करना चाहिए एज ए इकोनॉमी कि वो और आगे जा सके एज ए प्रॉब्लम ऑफ एज ए सीन ऑफ प्रॉब्लम?
Can you expand your horizon on India's leadership in global south, where exists a kind of messy regional politics and which have a differentiated interest within a global south?
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Chandra Roy, South Asian Studies again. So the question is, the last time the G20 held in Indonesia and 2023 the presidents got in India. So my question is that recently Narendra Modi, PM, mentioned about the development of global south. So my question is to Mr. Chari sir, is there any opportunity like US and China, India will be a global leader in economics as we got the G20 presidency and many new nations after the pandemic are ready to invest in it?
Very interesting questions. Actually, we can club 3 questions into one category and 1 neighborhood question into another category. But basically, the question that involves is about region. See, just as groupings are there, regions also is a notional area. Now regions have been changing also. There is no permanent region structure as such. So we have to understand the dynamics of regions. So if you see the regions, they have grouped and regrouped for different reasons. One is of course economic reason, and one reason is also a regional developmental paradigm issue. What happened was, when the economic development was happening in the West, East was considered to be underdeveloped. But gradually, the economic developmental process shifted from West to East. So now what has happened is, East has become a powerhouse, growth engine of global economics. So when East becomes a power engine or growth engine of economic development, automatically this region gets greater importance. So that is one reason why a new regional framework has also developed. Now, in a similar question about India's economic growth. India has a better chance of growing in a regional atmosphere than in an independent atmosphere. If you see the growth pattern of US, America as a country does not have any region. There is one country above, that is Canada, and then Mexico. That's all. America does not grow in a regional atmosphere because they do not know region. And all the American threat perception, the defense threat perception, does not come from the region. All the wars that America has fought is thousands of miles away from America. So that is not a war of existence, but a war of resources and a dogmatic war. So India is poised to grow, economically grow at a better pace and at a much faster pace. The economic development of Europe took place from 1945 to 2000, whereas the economic development of East, whether in China or India or for that matter Brazil or Argentina, if you see that economic growth, it has come in less than 2 decades. So what took 5 decades for the West, it takes less than 2 decades for the East to develop. So if you statistically improve that process, you will see that in the next 1 decade or less, our economic growth, India's economic growth, China's economic growth would probably surpass the economic growth of the rest of the countries in the world, the developed countries in the world. But this economic growth will have to be a regional growth and not an individual country growth. So that is what I say, that we have to grow as a region. But when we grow as a region, we have 2 factors. One is the regional growth and one is the neighborhood. Like USA, China also does not have a neighborhood. They have conflict with their neighborhood. So they have taken over Tibet, they have taken over Xinjiang, they want to take over more land. So this kind of attitude will not help in economic growth. So that is where we said that we have to grow as a region. And when we talk of region, there are 3 aspects to the region. One is the national growth, one is the neighborhood, immediate neighborhood, and one is what we call the extended neighborhood. So in the extended neighborhood, we have a large new region that is being developed, and that is called Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is developing as a new region. What was formerly called Asia-Pacific, now we call Indo-Pacific. Asia-Pacific does not have one leader, whereas when we say Indo-Pacific, it is India-centric Indo-Pacific. So we become the leader, or we set the rules as far as Indo-Pacific growth is concerned, and that's a very different subject. We will not go into the details of the subject. But on the question that you raised, both of you raised a similar question. That is regional growth we are talking about, and the emergence of Indo-Pacific as a new region, which has got both economic and non-economic growth opportunities for the whole world. And as far as neighborhood is concerned, we have to see to it that all the countries in the neighborhood grow. And when the economic development of these countries takes place, there are what we call creation of assets in different countries. Creation of assets in different countries through our efforts will make those countries dependent on us to a very large extent. But this is all theoretical. In practice, you have to balance always between the real world and the theoretical world. So when it comes to the problems of real world, you have to face those problems also. So as the Israeli proverb says, be friendly with everybody but keep your powder dry. So we have to be prepared for a conflict situation, but at the same time, the best way to avoid a conflict is to be prepared for it. So we have to be prepared for this situation, but at the same time, we have to work on those things. Another factor that we have to always remember as far as neighborhood is concerned is, we are dealing with countries, we are dealing with people, we are dealing with societies we are not talking in terms of dispensations, the governments. The government may be bad, the Chinese government may be bad, but the Chinese people are not bad. Pakistani government may be bad, but Pakistani people may not be bad. So, if need be, we will have to think in those terms also. I will not go into other strategic details, and this is not the forum to go into those strategic details. But we can discuss those details some other time. Maybe your professors can explain that point better in the classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Quick response from the Air Marshal.
Please cover most of it. Just a quick response to the issue of Bretton Woods system that you raised. The Bretton Woods institutions were set up, as I pointed out in my talk, explicitly, you're ending colonialism, but the economic neo-colonialism actually came in the form of Bretton Woods institutions, right? And the Common Bank as well. So the whole global economic architecture revolves around American constructed, the Euro-American constructed Bretton Woods system. And that will have a problem as we go along, as the emerging economies come in. We are still trading. For example, China's reserves of $3 trillion, 70% were in American treasuries. China has already downsized it to $1 trillion. Because what has it done? Very smartly, it's used a DRI mechanism and a lot of investments in African countries and other countries to convert those into debts that these countries owe to China. So it's taken away the dollar component from there. Why is that? Exactly when they've seized the Russian reserves, $300 billion, no country in the world is now willing to trust the system anymore. And we are also doing the same, right? So the economic order will change gradually. It's not going to change overnight. It's not possible to change overnight. It will take 20 years plus. In the meantime, they are bringing out other tricks in the form of cryptocurrency and other formats. The idea is to retain that hegemony, as what Dr. Chari pointed out. So this is where we have to be careful. But the G20 itself is an economic grouping. It represents the major G7, like I said, was the leading economies until the 90s. Now they realize the emerging economies will overtake many of those smaller countries like Italy, etc. So they brought in the G20. Now G20 has taken now 20 years more now to create enough center of gravity within ourselves. So now we can change gradually, and that is where the leadership matters. Okay, and that is the process. It's going to take time, but the idea of global south being taken care of can be done by G20 under the leadership of India, Brazil, South Africa, and other countries. We can actually provide that kind of confidence to the global south. And an example of that is the BRICS bank, the MDB. Now, most countries in Africa very clearly say there are no conditions attached to it, like the IMF condition. IMF conditions are inclusive. The Sri Lankan experience is a lesson to that. Most African countries, there are enough books written on that to all expose the problems those countries are faced because of IMF loans. Because the conditionalities that come with it are very, very serious. We take Ukraine. Ukraine is the bread bowl of Europe. And if you visit the beautiful land, black soil, this war has already handed over much of Ukraine's fertile agricultural soil to American multinational companies. Monsanto and others, Bayer and others own already what will be used in the agricultural wealth of Ukraine, and they will take the benefits. It's much like the oil industry domination. So this is the issue that needs to be understood, and the change, when you look at and appreciate what change will come, this understanding is necessary.
Good afternoon to everyone who's here today. And I would like to begin by saying that I'll keep it really short and sweet because I know that we are nearing lunchtime. So, and I feel immensely honored to stand here today and propose a word of thanks to everyone whose contributions, insight and efforts have made this conference a truly grand success. At the outset, I sincerely thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh Ji, for facilitating, inspiring and giving leadership to this event. even though he had to leave suddenly because of some prior commitments. But he did promise to watch the recording of vote of thanks. So moving ahead, and I extend my heartfelt gratitude to him for bringing such relevant and intellectually thought-provoking programs to our university. I extend a deep sense of gratitude to our chief guest, Dr. Sheshadri Chari, for kindly accepting the invitation and gracing this occasion. Thank you so much for your gracious presence and insightful speech. I also express grateful thanks to Air Marshal Dr. M. Matheshwaran for his esteemed presence and for sharing with us your encouraging thoughts and much valued opinions, sir. Today's lecture have been indeed very, very enriching, and the message has been in line with what the Prime Minister of our country has been seeking during this Amrit Kal. The idea of focusing on healing our one earth and creating harmony with our one family and giving hope for our one future can be a remarkable beginning for India to fulfill the higher aspirations of humanity. Realization of these high ideals and role of India as a leader of the international community was kindled long ago by Sri Aurobindo. He believed spirituality is the master key of the Indian mind, or what he called as the Swadharma. Indian spirituality did not reject life in the world, which is why for almost 3,000 years, India manifested stupendously, intellectually, vitality and power of joy of life. It created abundantly and incessantly republics, kingdoms, empires and philosophies. So, the presidency of G20 for India can actually be a spectacular opportunity to internationally transform dynamic life integrally by its spiritual light and power. This perhaps is one of the most fundamental leadership tasks before India as we march forward. My heartfelt thanks also due to our Dean International Relations, Professor Subramaniam Raju, for coordinating the event successfully and for his constant guidance and unmatched support, which has greatly helped towards the success of this conference. I would also like to express gratitude to my colleague Dr. Nand Kishore from the Department of Politics and International Studies for smoothly and efficiently steering this event. I would fail in my duty if I don't thank all the individuals behind this event. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a very motivated and dedicated team from the Vice Chancellor's office, the Office of the PRO, administration, teaching and all non-teaching members of Pondicherry University family who contributed in different capacities. I thank them all for their ready willingness to take on the completion of all tasks. And what will be an event without a keen audience? I take this opportunity to thank everyone present here, respected deans, head of departments, faculty members, and dear students, and it's so nice to see so many familiar faces. You all came together to make this event a great success by your enthusiastic participation and keen listening. Thank you so much, everyone. Jai Hind.
Namaste. This is Rituparna Paul from Center of South Asian Studies, Pondicherry University, and I am the ambassador of Pondicherry University for G20 University Connect. And this is a moment of pride that our India has got the presidency of G20, and in the troublesome time of after COVID era and with weak economy, India has got this opportunity to change the world with lots of responsibilities and challenges. India is promoting healthcare, infrastructure, trade and investment and startups and many other things. And as the citizen of India, I am proud that India has got this opportunity. From this University Connect program, the government has brought a better opportunity to us to connect with the government and get to see what is happening. And with this program, we'll get the opportunity to have a better future, better preparation for the next generation. That's all. Thank you. Jai Hind.
This is Kirti Sharma from Pondicherry University. Since India has taken the G20 presidency in 2023. So we have a kind of conference where all the two dignitaries came, named by Mr. Air Marshal Matheshwari and Sheshadri ji. They have talked about how India is emerging in the context of G20, how all the developing and the developed world, how their kind of convergence is there so that they can excel in their old duties. While considering all the international relations and the regional politics, they have discussed about the step which India would take during this whole summit, the summit which would lead on the September 2023. They have discussed about the young minds. This conference was held because of young minds, how they can expand their horizon in the vast cultural diversity where Pondicherry University exists. Where Pondicherry University exists with the cultural diversity of all the students coming from every part of India. So coming with the G20 presidency and holding it with a cultural aspect is the main motto of this conference. Thank you.
Hi, this is Satyam from Pondicherry University. When the whole world is entangled into a soil of chaos, India has assumed the G20 presidency. So this is a great honor for us, and knowing the fact that G20 is a group which is dominated by the mostly developed countries, and this is the group which is having a very broad economic dimension. So India is going to materialize its year ahead with showing its totality. What is its totality? India has achieved digital mission. India has achieved that healthcare sector transformation. India has achieved many more things which and that too in the pandemic era. So it can show the world that how it is going to be a bigger challenge for us to emerge as a growing economy in the coming years. So I hope all Indians would be cheer about it, and they will be looking forward that how India is going to materialize its G20 presidency in the coming months. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I participated in G20 University Connect lecture series, and it was very nice experience for me. And as India is as a center of geopolitics is shifting from Pacific to Indo-Pacific, and India can navigate, India can get benefited from lot of things because India is leading in third world nations, and the speakers here, they enlightened us with lot of views, lot of diverse views, be it from technology, be it from military perspective, be it from economics, and this series gave us perspective of what we can achieve through G20 presidency and what we can get through it, and it was a really very enlightening for us. Thank you.
Today we had a conference in which two panelists came and they gave a insightful lecture about the G20 and India's position in G20 as an aspiring global power. They expressed their thoughts in a very succinct way, and G20, which is its slogan for 2023, is one earth, one family, one future, which India refer it as Vasudev Kutumbakam, in which India is aspiring to become a global power in which its major aim is the common interests of all the nations. It is aspiring for the developmental assistance, that is partnership, and not in terms of aid, which all the Western powers have been doing. Like US, they have always treated East as poor. They have always discriminated between rich and poor. But India here aspires for building up a community where we could fight our global common problems. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Isha Dhi from Political Science Department, and it was really a very proud moment and enriching experience from Pondicherry University students to have such eminent personalities on the dais, and this very well explained the facts about India's stand on G20 this year. and the concepts like Eurocentrism, Atlanticism, the growth of BRICS and G20 countries, how they are going to bring a change in the global order. And indeed, they very well explain that India is a reliable country and not a dominant power, and how India's respect towards law of sea. So it was really an enriching experience from all of us. Thank you.